And one of the things that I realized that people have to be at a certain level before they can help others. And I came up with this thing about know yourself, accept yourself, forget yourself. And you really can't be helping other people if you're still busy knowing yourself.
Hello, everyone, and welcome to this week's episode of Trinity Talks. My name is Kyla, and this week we're going to dive into a topic that I think is really important for people in general to talk about, but also for people of faith, I think. We're going to talk about the connections between faith and mental health and how we as followers of Jesus, we as a church, can sort of support one another and support those in our midst who are struggling with their mental health. And I am really excited to be sitting down here with Iris. So thank you for joining me today.
Yeah, it's lovely to be here.
Yeah. So Iris, do you want to start by just introducing yourself a little bit?
Okay. I'm a psychotherapist, and it's a second career for me. And I have felt very blessed because I've had two wonderful careers. I was in education before, and retired from that in the end of '98. And then went back and got a Master's of Divinity in Counseling at Tyndall, and started a practice in 2002, and have been doing that as a private practice ever since. And continue to.
Very cool. Yeah. So when we talk about health, there's lots of different sort of spheres of this. A lot of people will think about physical health or mental health, but then there's also sort of emotional and spiritual health. So like, how do you see all of these different realms intersecting with one another?
Well, they certainly do intersect because we are organic and they all join together. I put together a little bit of a schematic that I thought would help people to understand.
So we have one big circle that says spiritual, but within each of those we have emotional, mental, and physical, and those are sort of like a Venn diagram that all intersect and overlap with one another, but spiritual sort of encompasses all of it.
Yeah, and a diagram is like it's quite simple and doesn't capture everything, but it was sort of the best I could do. And because, so emotional, as I put up there, is about the feelings. And oftentimes when we're talking about mental health, we are really talking about emotional health, which, because mental health is actually your cognitive and the way we think and process in a thinking way. And then the physical, obviously we know what the physical is. But they do, one very much impacts the other. And you can't, if you've got a physical issue, you've got thoughts about it and you've also got feelings about it. And likewise, if you're dealing with something emotionally, it impacts you physically and so on. We're much more aware of the physical aspect of ourselves, I think, than the other two. But the emotions is probably the one that we know the least about and are the most frightened by. And the spiritual, to me, it surrounds them all, and it very much is. It can be the answer, but also puts everything in perspective and holds them all together. But so that's where the faith and Christianity come in. But to access that, we have to be able to work through the other issues. So
there's this sense that the spiritual health is all-encompassing, sort of as you said, but it doesn't stand alone.
For sure. I think it helps a little bit maybe if we thought about how we measure some of these things. Like, so for example, if we thought of physical health, we measure that by how strong you are and how flexible you are and how you can endure, and there are tests to do that. If we think of cognitive, we think in terms of IQ tests or our thinking or our memory. As I get older, that becomes more of a real thing that you think about, like your mental, and the clarity is what we aim for there, and there are tests to do that. When we think of spiritual, I guess we think of trust and obedience and how trusting and obedient we are to the Lord. And with emotional, it can be a little bit more vague. And if you ask people what emotional health looks like, Like if I were to ask you, Kyla.
Yeah.
See, I'm much more used to asking questions than I am answering them.
Sure.
So if I start to answer your questions with, what do you think? Then
Yes.
you'll know I've reverted to a therapist, right?
Yes, that's all right.
Yeah. So, but if I asked you to how would you measure emotional health? How would you answer that?
Yeah, that feels hard. I mean, I would almost start by saying what it is that I'm experiencing. I'm experiencing happiness or sadness or anger or whatever, but that's not even a measure of emotional health. That's just
Identification.
emotions.
It's identification.
Yeah, I don't know. So is there a measurement?
Yes.
Okay.
Well, in a way, there's a measurement. So if I were a psychiatrist,
Yes.
I would use what is called I wrote this down because I always get the initials wrong. It's DSM, and I think they're in the 5th edition. So it's a book that tells, identifies all the different mental health issues.
Right.
But for myself as a psychotherapist, we don't diagnose. And for people in general, I think of a continuum.
Okay.
So if you took any mental or emotional health issue, say anxiety,
Yeah.
and you thought in terms of 0 to 10, all of us would fit somewhere on that.
Sure.
But there's a line, and the DSM would identify that. If you are over that line, then they would diagnose you as having an anxiety disorder.
Right.
Yeah. For me, the best definition that I come up with for emotional health is expressing the appropriate emotion at the appropriate level for the given situation.
Okay.
Okay?
Yep.
So sometimes when I hear people saying, you often hear this at a funeral, where wasn't she strong? And what that really meant, what's that mean? If somebody says, wasn't she strong? What's that usually mean?
Well, usually it means they held themselves together. They weren't overly emotional and grief-stricken and those things, right?
Yeah. Well, I would question whether that was strong or not.
Sure.
Yeah. Now, it might be because that person may be showing the emotions in a different way, in a different forum. But just because they didn't cry or they didn't fall apart literally, if it's a loved one, it doesn't mean that they're being strong. It could be that they're pushing down their emotions.
Right.
And pushing down emotions, it's like a garbage can. At some point it gets full. Mm-hmm. And it usually comes out in very inappropriate ways.
Sure.
And that's where you have, like anger, for example, being shown much bigger than the given situation would seem to warrant.
Right. Yeah. So I'm interested, I think, specifically in how the spiritual health aspect fits into all of this. And it's interesting to me, you said you did a Master's of Divinity in counseling.
Yeah.
And so I would imagine that there was a lot of sort of thought put into how our spiritual health connects with our emotional health and that sort of thing. So yeah, how do you see those two things? Are they at odds with one another? How do they integrate well?
Yeah. They're totally not at odds with one another. Mm-hmm. They can be if used incorrectly, I believe, but they're not at odds. I'm reminded of the 12-step program, where they have this slogan that says that we have an emotional problem with a physical manifestation and a spiritual cure.
Okay.
And so I think that sometimes when I was thinking about that, I thought they should probably say with a physical and thinking, but they cover that because they talk about stinking thinking.
Sure.
Yeah, quite a bit. Yeah. So basically, but they are right that it's an emotional issue that, like, I see addictions of any kind as a symptom of an emotional issue and an escape from something, sort of thing. But the spiritual cure is absolutely right on, because like the answer is in our faith, and so it has so much that we can use, and even psychotherapists or psychologists who are not Christians or have a faith or spirituality that they would talk about recognize a lot of what Christianity offers as healing, like thinking positively, And think about Philippians 4:8, I believe, where it is, about think on those things that are
right.
lovely
Whatever's
and
lovely and true
and so on.
Yeah.
Well, isn't that what we're supposed to do if when we get down? Like and forgiveness,
Right.
which is very much a part of the Christian belief, is very much like that's known to be necessary before total healing can take place between relationships. So it has all the answers. The problem is that one has to work through the emotional aspects to get to that. Otherwise, it just becomes cliches and unhelpful, and sometimes even harmful.
Yeah, for sure. Yeah, I think that it sort of reminds me then of like how these things about our faith, you know, sometimes when someone is struggling with something, we'll tell them, we'll just pray about it. We'll just trust God with that thing. And there is some truth in that, right? That there is, you know, coming to God and in faith is helpful. But like you said, it needs to be paired with that emotional healing and well-being as well, I think.
Yeah. And like, absolutely. We know that. And the answer is in that, but I can't hear that. There's no way I can hear that if I'm struggling with something emotionally,
right,
or some circumstance in my life. I can't hear that. It just sounds like you want to be rid of me,
right?
And which, by the way, is a huge issue, because one of the hardest things that we as humans seem to have to do is to sit with pain, with our own pain and with other people's pain.
Yep.
We want to run away from it. We're very uncomfortable with it.
Yep.
And one of the hardest things when I say to my clients, I want you to sit with that pain, even for 2 minutes.
Yep.
And it seems very hard, very, very hard. Even though they're there to work on the stuff, they still just sitting with your pain. We want to run away from it. We want to make ourselves a cup of tea. We want to go for a walk. We want to do anything, but just literally sit with that pain.
Yeah, that's hard.
And then even harder to sit with somebody else's.
Of course, for sure.
If we say, I'll pray for you, or just trust in the Lord, the person who's struggling just hears that, you want to get away from me.
Right.
Because that's what it is.
Yeah. Because we're all struggling with that.
Yeah.
So in faith communities, there's this that we were just sort of talking about. But are there other sort of common misconceptions or challenges that you think people in faith communities have towards mental health challenges?
Yeah, it's interesting. I had thought that we were far beyond this, but then I was talking to a colleague, another therapist, the other day, and it came up that this still happens, and I thought that how awful this is. Because I believe there are Christians and churches that even think that that something like depression or anxiety or any of the OCD or any of the difficulties that people have are sinful or a lack of willpower.
Right.
And you're just being weak, and that is so. It really makes me sad to think that is still out there. And yet it is. And so I think we have to bar against that. So the answer is in our faith. I mean, we've got everything in the faith. We've got the community. We've got all the things that can support. But if we think of emotional issues, we wouldn't think of physical issues as sinful or mental, like cognitive. You don't think somebody's sinful just because they aren't as smart as you.
Right.
However, we can go there that they're not strong and not being strong enough if they have an anxiety or a fear or a depression.
Right. Yeah. I think that's a really big thing. And I think even I think there's nuances to that, right? So there would be some people who might say, these mental illnesses are sinful in and of themselves, but there's other people who maybe they wouldn't say it in those words, but they would say, well, you just need more faith.
Yeah.
Right? Or, well, if you just trust God, if you just keep praying, God will cure you of this mental illness.
And there's truth in that.
Sure.
There's truth in that. Because we do need more faith. I don't know if we need more faith. We need more trust and more obedience. But that doesn't cure the emotional issue. It's the same as if I break a leg. like I have to go to the doctor and get it set and so on and so forth.
Yeah.
And we know that. I mean, God could zap his finger and do it, but he doesn't as a rule.
Sure.
So with emotions, it's the same thing. We have to work through them. And there's many things, and it's just like, I broke my arm last year, and it's healed, it's functional, it's wonderful, but it's not like it was before.
Sure.
And so when we have emotional issues that happen to us, and we all do from birth on, like you mend to a degree, but they're still there.
Sure.
And so you still continue to work through those. And our faith can be very helpful in working through those. But we still need to recognize that we have responses that are just part of who we are. And the more worn down we are in one way or another, the more those responses will come out.
Sure. Yeah.
In other words, coping mechanisms that aren't very helpful.
Sure. Yeah. And I appreciate the sort of line that we're trying to walk here, where we're saying, that there is something really valuable in faith, and faith is not the magic cure-all, right? That there's something, faith provides us with positive coping mechanisms, but it's not just have more faith and you'll be fine. Right?
Exactly. Because along with that faith, you have to, just like you have to let your leg heal, there has to be healing in your emotions. And recognizing that, like, emotions, we have them all, we don't get over them. And we don't get over the impact that our childhood, every therapist that you work with will always take you back to childhood. And there's a reason for that, because we set up patterns and ways of thinking when we're children that we continue to act out as adults, even though they're no longer necessary and or helpful. But it's just so in part of our DNA that we just do it. And so that's, and that is part of us, and no matter how old we are. And that will pop up.
For sure. For sure. So as we're thinking about that, I think for some folks, whether it's in childhood or later, the church is sometimes a place that causes some challenges, causes some harm. And so, what are some ways that you think the churches can work to reduce harm, but also to promote a sense of healing for those who have been hurt by Christians or by faith?
I think a church at its best is family. And just like our biggest hurts and joys can come from our family of origin, and our also it can come from the church. And it's because it's so important that those hurts are real. And so that you can get hurt by people and relationships, because we're all people here just like we are out there, sort of thing. So we can hurt each other and love each other. So, but the church has so many things that, like, first of all, it is a community. Having a mental health issue can be, I'm going to try and change that to an emotional health issue, but I may go on a campaign. It can cause people, one of the first things people want to do, especially if it's depression, is they want to isolate. And because they don't like being around themselves, so they find it really difficult to think that anybody else would want to be around them. But so church can really be the community and of that person. And like, I would encourage anyone struggling to reach out, but also sometimes the church needs to reach out to them because they can't sometimes. And so any way that the church can reach out to people and be available. Another huge thing I think that the church can do is to start to recognize within each individual, encourage the idea that it's important to know our own issues. A number of years ago, if I'm off on a tangent here, I know you'll bring me back. So a number of years ago, I started working with Hospice Peel. It's a wonderful organization. And I used to do some training of their volunteers, their bereavement volunteers. And one of the things that I came up with was, these are people, most people that volunteer there obviously have been people that have been go through bereavement themselves. And one of the things that I realized that people have to be at a certain level before they can help others. And I came up with this thing about know yourself, accept yourself, forget yourself. And you really can't be helping other people if you're still so busy knowing yourself. Now, trust me, this is circular, because the more we forget ourselves, the more we learn about ourselves.
Sure.
But in the moment that we're helping people, we need to be the small circle. And so in order to be the small circle, we have to work through some of our own stuff too.
Sure.
And so it's the know yourself by figuring out your own emotional levels and accepting yourself that that's just who I am and that's okay.
Sure.
It's okay. And then be able to forget yourself when you're working with other people. Like as a therapist in the room, if I'm not being the small circle, I'm not being a very good therapist.
Right.
And I can't be the small circle if I'm busy thinking about my own stuff and working through my own stuff.
Sure.
Yeah.
Sure.
And it's not that it doesn't come up, but you're able to set it aside.
Right.
But then be honest to yourself and honoring of yourself by working through that stuff on your own.
Right.
Or with other people.
Sure. But just not in that moment.
Owning it.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. I think that's really interesting and really important to think about as we think about like Christian leadership in particular. As we think about, pastors or deacons or whoever it is that is leading and caring for other people. It does require some deep work on yourself.
Very much so.
To be able to do that well.
Absolutely. Yeah. May I just mention, because I just glanced down at my notes here, and a couple other things that when you mentioned about what the church, one of the things that happens, especially with people who are depressed or going through difficult times, is to remain hopeful. And the church can provide that, but in a loving, not in a platitude type way, but in a very loving way of walking beside people. And sometimes when people are really down, you have to hold the hope that they don't have.
Yep.
And our Christian belief, it's all about like the hope. It doesn't matter how bad of a mess the world is in. Like we know who wins here. Like we know. And so that hope, if we can carry that, and something I guess I'd throw in here is that people don't know, they don't care how much you know until they know how much you care. And I know that's an old saying, but it's really true. But if they know, I can get away with my clients with things and say things to them and push them quite a bit because they know I care.
Right.
Yeah. But if you tried that before they know that, it won't work.
Sure.
Yeah.
Sure. Yeah. Yeah. So it also then requires building a bit of trust, which I think then requires you to be in it for the long haul.
For sure. Yeah.
Which is something that I think a local church and its members can do quite well, right? Because the individuals in a church, maybe come and go, but the church itself stays and is fairly permanent. And hopefully the people who are leading that church can make a commitment to being there, to walking with people through a season, through many seasons, hopefully. Yeah.
And I don't think it's only the leadership. I think that it's something that each individual, like the congregation in general, can participate in that and needs to participate in that, because you leaders can't do it all.
Sure. Sure.
Yeah. And I think another piece of that is to know when the person needs professional help too.
Sure.
Yeah, because I think that because like we can't do it all within the church. We are just there I think to support and encourage, but encouraging, part of the encouragement is encouraging people to get professional help when they need it.
Sure.
You wouldn't let somebody walk in here with a broken leg and not tell them to go to a doctor.
Sure.
Yeah.
Sure. Yeah. So I think that's a tricky thing for pastors and church leaders and people to sort of figure out is what is mine to do and what needs to be sort of referred elsewhere. So like what would you sort of say into that space? If there's someone, a church leader trying to figure out, okay, I have this person before me. How do I know what's mine to care for and what I need to refer to a professional?
Yeah, I think that that it has to do, if you think in terms of what we started off here with the, like, is there an emotional issue here? Like, if this person comes in, like you as leaders of a church, you're spiritual leaders, and that's really important. It's not emotional leaders.
Right.
So if somebody comes to you with an emotional issue,
right,
then to me that's not you're not qualified.
Sure. Yes. Yeah.
So it's the idea of being able to discern, and it's not always easy to discern.
Sure.
Because it may appear like a spiritual issue that really is an emotional issue.
Sure.
But I think it's important to just, and the severity of it, because we all have emotional issues. You remember that continuum?
Right.
We all have anxiety. We all have depression. It's just where we are in the continuum.
Sure.
And so it's a judgment call, of course.
Yep.
But if you think of it, I relate it back to the physical. It's like, if somebody is really looking physically sick, or they've got, you would recommend they go to a doctor, would you not?
Sure. Yes. Yeah.
So I think you'd trust your discernment in that, and recognizing that you don't have to be all things to all people.
Sure.
Like, if somebody starts talking to me about legal things, I'm not going to. That would be very wrong for me to talk to them or to suggest, or business things. I'm not that's not my expertise.
Sure. Yeah. And I think, like, as you were talking there, I was sort of reflecting on my own journey with spiritual and emotional health, and just thinking, like, there are moments, and there have been moments in my life where, you know, therapists have been super helpful in helping me figure out emotional challenges in my life. And at the same time, I still needed and wanted spiritual support and leaders, right? Like, it's not like we refer someone to a mental health professional and then we abandon them to that.
Of course not. No, no. It's not one or the other. It's both, but it's just recognizing who needs to take charge of what part of it.
Yes. Yeah, for sure. Yeah. So you talked about this, the importance of this work of knowing your own stuff so that you can sort of know yourself and then move towards the forgetting of yourself so you can care for other people. So how do we do that? Are there sort of certain, like, tools or resources that you might recommend to help someone start to do some of that work of knowing themselves?
Yeah, I think one of the first things, as far as I'm concerned, is to start to understand your emotions a little bit. And it's sometimes just to check in. Like, we're feeling all the time.
Sure.
So sometimes it's just an idea to say, okay, how am I feeling right now? And I tell my clients that, you know, you can, that there's really 4 basic emotions: sad, mad, glad, and afraid.
Okay.
And then under that, there's a whole bunch of vocabulary that is very helpful to learn. Like, there's a huge difference between melancholy and despair.
Sure.
There's a huge difference between annoyed and rage.
Yes.
But they all come under anger. They all come under, So it's getting to, like I tell my clients, like, acknowledge the feeling.
Yep.
And affirm it. And by affirming it, I just mean it's okay.
Right.
So it's like, no matter, we're afraid to feel some feelings because we go to the expression, but a feeling by itself is a messenger. It's just telling us something.
Sure.
And we don't want to listen to it.
Yeah.
So, like, if you just say, okay, I'm feeling sad right now,
Right.
and the next thing you recognize you're sad, then it's okay that I'm sad.
Right.
And then you might want to do some investigating about, I wonder what that's about. What's the message right now? But sadness is an important feeling.
Sure.
We don't want to chase it away, because sadness is always about loss. It's always about loss. And once you allow yourself to grieve and mourn whatever the loss is, it's inviting you to let go of something so you can grab onto something else.
Sure.
But if you don't go through the process of feeling the loss, then you can't get to the other.
Yeah.
Anger has such a terrible reputation, especially among women.
Yes.
Anger has such a bad reputation. But anger's so important because it's the motivator.
Right.
If people hadn't got angry, you and I wouldn't vote.
Right. Yeah.
So it's a motivator. However, if it gets out of place or then it becomes very destructive.
Sure.
But anger on itself is very motivating. It says a boundary has been crossed here or violated. A value has been violated, and I need to do something to put in a boundary to put that back in place.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. Mm-hmm. So anger is important.
Right.
All emotions are important,
right.
and if we see them that way,
yeah.
So that's the first thing, is just to be able to be aware of how you're feeling, because most people don't want to do that.
Sure. Yeah, for sure.
Yeah. And it's seen as weak.
Yeah, for sure. So if there are folks who are listening who are, people of faith, Christians, who find themselves struggling with their emotional health, are there resources or next steps that you might offer to them?
Yeah. The first would be to admit that they are. Mm-hmm. The second would be to reach out for help. Mm-hmm. And because I said before about people want to isolate.
Yeah.
And it's important for them to reach out. And so to reach out and to be open about things and being willing. Know it's going to take time, but being willing just to be vulnerable with people.
Sure.
The other part of it is I'm not talking here about people like falling apart all the time, all over. Like
sure.
One has to discern the appropriate time and with the appropriate people.
Sure.
Like I think there are two extremes. People that they're like a vault. They don't.
Yep.
They never admit any emotions, and then people that are emoting, neither one of those are healthy emotional places.
Right.
So it's being willing to get help to see that, but also to take some direction and be open to that, because I think we need to be free to direct people in certain ways. But yeah, seek help and reach out.
Yeah. Okay. And what about for folks who are knowing someone who's struggling with their emotional health? What would be sort of helpful steps for them to take?
Yeah. Again, it's that. First of all, if it's somebody that is close to you, that you are, be patient, which is hard sometimes.
Totally.
And be willing to sit with their pain.
Yeah.
And, I mentioned that before, and I can't emphasize that enough.
Yep.
Is that, and it's uncomfortable and so on, but to be willing to sit with their pain.
Yep.
And also to suggest to them that they get help.
Right.
Yeah. Mm-hmm. And not to allow yourself to be drawn into it, because you don't want to go down the drain with them.
Sure.
So you have to watch your own boundaries around stuff like that too.
Sure. Yeah. I think that can be especially hard. I know it's hard for Christian leaders caring for other people, but I think it's even harder and more complicated when you're talking about family and friends, right? Because it's this person, maybe it's your partner, it's your whole world, it's your kid, it's right. But how to figure out, okay, what does it look like to sit with them in their pain and to take care of yourself at the same time?
I think Jesus gave us a really good model of that. I must admit I'm a bit of a fan of the series The Chosen, because I think it has shown Christ in such a human way as well as a godly. And like the way that, but in the scriptures it's very, very clear that, he was with people, he was passionate and being with them, but he took time to be with his Father and taking care of himself.
Right.
And to go off and pray.
Yeah.
And even though they thought they should go one direction, he was quite willing to go another direction because the Lord had led him in that way. I think we need to do that too. It's like we're not going to be, it's that whole put your own mask on first sort of thing.
Right.
Because, you need to care for people, but at the same time, you can't care for them if you're not caring for yourself and keeping your own self in proper physical, emotional, and mental health and spiritual health.
Yeah, for sure. And I think that feels really hard to do sometimes, but still really important.
one of the things I love continuums. I think my clients get very tired of me talking about continuums, but I love continuums. My husband said I got to stop it when I ask him to do a continuum between peanut butter and almond butter, but
okay.
I can be a bit extreme. Yeah. Anyway, point being that like if you know yourself, I think there are two extremes. One is that you are so clinical and that you appear cold and uncaring. So you're way over here. And the other one is that you're so compassionate and empathetic and so on that you just burn out and so on.
Yep.
And so neither one of those extremes is healthy. It's helpful, first of all, to know which side you fall on.
Sure.
Like which end are you closest to.
Sure.
Because then that helps you to know which way you have to move.
Sure.
You know, I have a wide idea. I always say between 3 and 7 is normal, natural, and to be expected. But if you find yourself out at an 8 or a 9 in one end or a 1 and 2 at the other, then you need to move in. Yeah.
Sure.
So then knowing where you are, then that tells you, do I have to be more clinical in this situation and protect myself, or do I need to be warmer and more caring? Yeah.
Yeah. And as someone who, in situations where I'm providing care to another person, I think my natural instinct is towards compassion. And so to hear maybe sometimes I need to be a little more clinical is challenging.
Yeah.
And sometimes it feels like, well, no, that's not Jesus-y. Jesus was all about compassion and those sort of things. But
he was also taking care of himself.
He was also taking care of himself. Yeah.
Yeah.
And so to bring those things together, I think is really important.
Yeah. The other thing I think that's important is to be able to recognize that it's their issue.
Right.
And by the way, that's a very caring, loving thing to leave it with them, because we can get so involved that we get to be the big circle, and it becomes about us.
Right.
And so it's like to be compassionate and empathetic with the person, but leave it with them. It's theirs. Honor them.
Yeah.
And give them the idea that they can do this.
Right.
Because with God's help, they can.
Right. Yeah. Sort of honoring their whole personhood.
Exactly.
Right. That this is someone who, has all of these complex issues, but they're not incapable in the grand scheme of things of coming through that. Right. With the right supports, with the help of other people, with the help of God.
Yeah.
But I don't need to take it from them.
No. So sobering as it is, we can recognize that, so say I see a client for an hour for a week. They're spending 23 hours every day for 7 days without me.
Yes.
So I mean, they're doing something.
Yes.
Right. Yeah. So just recognizing that we can help, but we don't have to do it all.
Yeah. Yeah, sure. Yeah. No, that's really helpful, I think. Yeah. Was there anything else that you wanted to sort of touch on as we think about this idea of faith and emotional health and how these all intersect with one another?
No, I think you've given me a really good opportunity with your questions, Kyla, to say what I said. I think my biggest message, and I don't know if it's come across, but my biggest message would be to recognize that we all have emotional issues.
Sure.
And I think that by recognizing that, it helps us put less stigma on people.
Sure.
That theirs have maybe gone to the point where they're causing a little bit of dysfunction. But recognizing that there's probably about this far between them being dysfunctional and where I'm at this moment, sort of thing.
Sure.
So it normalizes it a bit. Mm-hmm. And I think the more we recognize that, then the less frightened we are of it, and the more we're willing to enter into it. Mm-hmm. Yeah. You're not going to disappear because you sit with pain.
Right.
For 5 minutes, you know.
Yeah, for sure. Yeah, that hope that there's something normal about having emotional health challenges, about dealing with all of these things, and that faith offers us fertile ground for coping with that.
Absolutely. Yeah.
Yeah.
In the end, it's the best coping mechanism in the world, but we have to get there. by going through the emotions.
Yeah, for sure. Yeah. Well, thank you so much, Iris.
Yeah, my pleasure. Yeah.
And thank you for tuning in to this week's episode of Trinity Talks. Whether you are finding yourself in the midst of some mental and emotional health challenges, or whether you are simply caring for others who are going through those things, I pray that you are able to find the path forward through knowing yourself, through trusting God, and through seeking support from those around you. And we will see you again next week.